Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I am your host McEdam, and today we're talking probably one of the biggest episodes of Series 12 of Doctor Who, Fugitive of the Judoon. Written by Vinil Patel and Chris Chibnall, and is directed by Ninda Manzuro. This story was heavily advertised. It was actually the most advertised story in the series. More advertised than the start of the series. It was very strange. The Judoon, a returning monster from Series 3 of the revived era of Doctor Who, a creature that was created by Russell T Davies way back in the story Smith and Jones, which was the first appearance of Martha, which is really cool. The Judoon were everywhere in advertisement. In fact, what they did for promotion is actually take the Judoon costumes and made them like walk around the cities and stuff, and people can have their photographs with them advertising Doctor Who. When after the previous episode, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, there was a whole campaign. It's like, you must not miss this episode. This is going to be a massive episode that's going to contain massive spoilers if you haven't seen this episode. So you've got to watch it live so you don't spoil it for yourself. They really hyped this up. And a lot of people had a lot of theories. It's like, why this episode in particular? Vinil Patel was one of the few writers that from everybody got massive acclaim from Series 11. He previously wrote the phenomenal Demons of the Punjab, which is probably one of the best written episodes of Doctor Who in a long time. And he was brought in to talk about Judoon and have a Judoon story. So you had a writer who has proven himself in the previous series, now tackling a iconic Doctor Who monster, the Judoon. And, that's pretty cool stuff, and it's pretty neat, and this is probably, I think, the first time, with the exception of the Daleks, that a monster, in the main series. Oh wait, you got the Master. I tell a lie. Okay, I tell a lie. It was the first recurring monster then that was originating from the new series, and it was it's just, it's a massive deal. It was a massive deal at the time, as long as with all this advertisement and acclaim. But the story came out and it was massively controversial for completely changing the show to a degree. I would argue how far it has gone. I don't think it has changed as far as many people have taken this story to represent. But however, it does reveal massive elements for the canonical mythology of Doctor Who. And so it was kind of a surprise, but it is it's kind of set up like this was a mid-series finale. Even though, if I remember correctly, the series didn't actually take a break. It just sort of built up to this episode. Well, not built up to this episode, but advertisement-wise, they were building up to this episode. So something big was going to happen. Something that just you had to watch it to understand what is going on, what's happening, So this was a massive, massive deal. I couldn't emphasize how massive this was a deal. In fact, I believe it had the highest ratings of any Jodie Whittaker story, with the exception of her first story, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which had the highest rated Doctor Who stories of all the revived era. But yeah, there was so much advertisement to this, it was ridiculous. This is something that we've never seen before, and we won't see again in the Chris Chibnall era. One of the things that a lot of people have criticised Chris Chibnall era for, and it is totally justified, is that the advertisement of the show was poor. It was poor at best, with only a handful of trailers and hardly anything building up to the series. With the exception of this one episode. Pretty mad. But anyway, let's get on to the story at hand. When we get into it, we get introduced to a new character, Ruth, played by Jo Martin. And I really like these scenes where, you know, we're just getting introduced to this new character in her life, and you know, she is this, what do you call it, like guide to all the things in, I think it's Gloucestershire that they're in. And I just like Jo Martin is just such fun to be around in these scenes. When she's walking around and she's high-fiving the kids and she's petting all the dogs and she's saying hello to the duck, and she comes in and she meets her husband, Lee, played by Neil Sclouch, I believe his name, I pronounce his name, Sclouch. And she also goes into a cafe to meet Big Ear Alan, played by Michael Begley, who is like one of my favorite. He has such a small role, and he's such a weird character. He made a dossier about Lee because he finds him a suspicious fella, and it's clearly that he's doing this to try and win Ruth's affection. But there's just something like fun about these scenes. There's nothing really like politically going on. There's nothing deep going on. We're just getting introduced to these nice characters as the world's about to go to hell because the Judoon are coming, because they are looking for the Fugitive, a renegade of, like, you know what a fugitive is. I don't know why I'm explaining that. And like the first half of the story is mainly about like fun action adventure. The story has nothing really to talk about. This is a complete divergent from Vinay Patel's previous story, Demons of the Punjab, where it was very political heavy. This story, at least for the start of it anyway, is mainly just having a fun little action Judoon story, and that is something that I was actually like really looking forward to when the story was announced. I really just wanted a fun Judoon story, a story that focuses on the Judoon as the main threat, and a story which, you know, they come to this small village, they just mess everything up, and it's up to the Doctor and her friends to solve the day. That's what a story I really wanted from this, and the first half I really do. When we get reintroduced to the Doctor and her companions in this story, we get the things that I get really annoyed with. The Doctor's very quiet towards her companions, and when she explains why, she reveals that she's looking for the Master, and our characters basically just state to the Doctor, it's like, you've been quiet for a while, this is what happens, is this what happens when you try to avoid us? You seem very quiet and timid. I can understand like that was like a really cool like character moment, that the Doctor was going this quiet, a little bit darker, a little bit distant from her friends. The big issue here, however, in terms of the story arc, is that doesn't really work, because in the previous stories, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, Orphan 55, the Doctor treats them completely normal. There is no different character interactions. This would have worked really well if this story came right after Spyfall, in which the Doctor did go a bit distant at the end after she went to Gallifrey and found out it was destroyed. That part plays a big part in her character in this story. But it's just really a setup scene to remind people that the story arc is still going on, that the Doctor's planet is destroyed, and this is a big mystery. And that element of the episode was really dumb, but it's only for a scene as the Doctor gets interrupted by a signal from the Judoon, as she put a signal, like a barrier around the world to protect it, and the Judoon have done an illegally like barricaded Gloucestershire to try and find this fugitive, and this is when the Doctor and co interact with the rest of the story. When they come in, they meet Big Ear Alan. After Lee and Alan have a confrontation, and Alan just gives him this cake that says, "You can do better." It's a cake that's supposed to be for Ruth. And that was pretty funny, but Lee comes off as this really shady character. Clearly he knows something about the Judoon. He knows why they're here. Maybe he's the fugitive, and he basically goes on the run as the rest of the characters try and chase after Lee. With the exception of Graham, who sees all his cakes in a cafe and is just like amazed. I especially love when he looks at the cake and is like, bloody hell, that's the worst cake I've ever seen. And he just looks up at Alan with this massive grin before he is suddenly teleported out of the story, as he finds himself on what seemingly is an abandoned alien spacecraft. yeah, this story, welcome to the first big reveal of this story. As he hears a voice which might be really familiar to hardcore fans. And it is revealed that this story features the return of John Barrowman's Captain Jack Harkness. That was a big deal. In fact, it was such a big deal, it was actually the inspiration for my first ever Doctor Who video. Fugitive of the Judoon was the first video I made about on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description if I remember, but the excitement, the absolute thrill of seeing Captain Jack back. This was before, of course, the whole stuff with John Barrowman. So let's get the elephant out of the room. We are not justifying John Barrowman's very childish behaviour on the sets that he was on during his previous time on Doctor Who, as well as other shows like Arrow, where he was very inappropriate to other members of staff, and he always just played it off like it was a joke. But yeah, we don't condone that here at McEdam Productions. We do feel like, however, if he did apologise, he would be forgiven, because like it was a joke, but that's beside the point. But taking away the actor from the character, to see Captain Jack back, a fan favourite character, was so cool and so awesome. It was just a crying shame that why he was here, what he's doing in this story, just absolutely ruins it. Absolutely abysmal way of reintroducing such a classic character. This character does nothing in the adventure. He just makes a lot of jokes with Graham, especially thinking that he is the Doctor originally, and then realising that the Doctor is now a female in this incarnation thanks to Graham, and he's just like absolutely like in absolute giddy, and he's like, oh, I've got to see this. But his scenes are clearly like building up and have nothing to do with the Ruth story, has nothing to do with the Judoon, doesn't tie into anything. His entire scenes are basically turning to the audience. It may as well Chris Chibnall might have all just walked on the set, turned around and was like, this is the story arc part. He's going to say something at the very end of the episode which will tie into the finale of the story. So that's all you need to pay for. That's all you want from Jack. Goodbye. And walks off. That's what Chris Chibnall should have written, because that is essentially what happened. Jack's only here so that we can have the story arc, which is really dumb, especially when you consider that this story is very story arc heavy. Might not sound like it now, but it will. Later on as well, Jack kidnaps Ryan and Yaz, and because they are completely isolated from the rest of the story, they have nothing to do. The companions are completely like, they don't do anything. What was the point of having them? Like, thing. Though Yaz and Ryan do get a few scenes, and one, they do tease that Yaz was going to do something really cool. Like, she talks about stalling the Judoon, as she's a police officer herself. She can speak police. She can essentially speak their language. Also, it was really cool to hear the Judoon language again. That Pojo, Rojo, Gojo, Rojo. Absolutely love it. Absolutely. Just there's me with a big grin on my face. Absolutely big grin on my face. When we cut back to the Doctor and the Ruth story. Yaz says that she's going to do that, but she is quickly teleported away when she confronts the Judoon. And again, like I said, completely is taken out of the story. Then we get back to the Doctor and Ruth and this big mystery of like who the fugitive is. They originally think it's Lee, and Ruth has no idea what the hell any of this is. After the Yaz finds a box with a strange material. I think it was Yaz. It might have been Ryan in the bedroom, and it was clearly something alien. And the Doctor, Lee knows what it is and tries to keep it off him, and Ruth has no idea. So they think that Lee is the fugitive. And Lee then decides he's going to buy them some time. Ruth, Doctor, escape, take Ruth with you, and I'll buy you some time. I will stay here. I will surrender myself to the Judoon and keep everyone safe in the village. That's what we're led to believe. Until we get introduced to the character of Gat, basically who the Judoon are working for, played by Reith Arya, who has a very small role in the story. She's only in 2 scenes. However, she gives this character such a sinister military feel to the character. Really well played. Really well played. Again, there's not really much to the character. She's only in 2 scenes. Yeah, and it's scene right at the end. But like the portrayal, Ruth's portrayal, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we learn that Lee was a military officer in her army of sorts, and they were trained in the same place. They know all each other's military secrets in terms of like combat and like secrets and all that, and keeping secrets and all that. But she quickly reveals to the Judoon after killing him that he is not the fugitive that they're looking for. He is not the one they're looking for. As he, before he dies, he sends a message to Ruth. Go to the lighthouse, break the glass, happy birthday, which triggers something in Ruth's brain. As the Doctor and Ruth get captured by the Judoon in the church, which is a really stunning place to set this scene, where Ruth suddenly gets like triggered. She basically is like a sleeper agent, and a part of her is woken up, and she just all of a sudden kicks the living monkeys out of the Judoon and breaks one of their horns and holds a gun to them and forces them all to teleport away. And she's just like, I don't know how I did this. I don't know why. And the Doctor is just like completely shocked. She reveals basically to Ruth that you don't even know who you are. There is a secret personality hidden within you, your real personality. And this is like a deception, a diversion, a identity that you've created for yourself to protect yourself. And this like terrifies Ruth, and she reveals that the lighthouse that Lee mentioned in the text is to do with her birthplace, or at least where she grew up with her family. She grew up on a abandoned lighthouse, which kind of doesn't make sense, but that kind of also plays into the mystery, I suppose. And we get some really great scenes here, which shows that Vanil Patel really can do just small, like fun, interesting moments. One of like the best scenes in this story is when the Doctor and Ruth are just in the car, and it's clearly that Ruth is hiding something, and the Doctor is trying to like get her to reveal stuff. There's a great line where it's like Ruth is just like, it's not a place, I don't want to like grow up like them, I don't want to grow up abandoned away from people. And then the Doctor's just like, I've never been a fan of growing up. Like, I just picture Tom Baker saying that. There's no point of being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes, innit? And then we get to the scene which completely, from this point forth, completely changes the story from a story which at the moment has mainly been self-contained to the thing that connects the entire storyline of Series 12. As Ruth finds this glass and smashes it, as an energy pulsates into her mind, pastes into her brain. As the Doctor finds her parents' gravestone, but there's no writing there. The Doctor digs down to find out what's underneath. What is this secret personality Ruth is hiding? And it is revealed to be a police telephone box from 1960s. As she turns around, sees Ruth in a brand new costume with like this, just a really cool costume. I absolutely love it. And it is revealed that Ruth, Jo Martin in the story, is playing another alternate version of the Doctor. What? What? That was like a complete... I remember watching it and just being like, having my jaw dropped, like, holy hell. Holy Christ. Another incarnation of the Doctor? What's this? A future incarnation of the Doctor? An alternate universe? Are we actually, like, doing this? Holy hell. And then we actually get, like, shots inside the TARDIS, and it is absolutely gorgeous. A classic TARDIS inspired, with these blue lights of imageries on the walls of lines and stuff. You see the chameleon arch device behind Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, and boom, we'll get on. We'll talk about it as a story, and then we'll get on to like our opinions on this, because, like I said, this was hugely controversial. I have my own opinions on this, but in terms of shock value, in terms of entertainment, this story nails that element to a T. That was absolute, like, nobody was expecting that. Nobody called it. It was shocking as hell. And especially what the Fugitive Doctor, as she's been called by the fans, what she represents, what she actually is in the series, is massively controversial, and is something, like, again, we talk about. But let's talk about, like, let's get into the story, and then we'll backtrack and we'll talk about the opinions and what this actually means. As the Doctor doesn't recognise this incarnation of the Doctor, so clearly it must be from her future. But Ruth, the Fugitive Doctor, doesn't recognise the Doctor either, our Doctor. So clearly she is not from her past. And the Doctor reveals a sonic screwdriver, to which the Fugitive Doctor has no idea what that is. Doesn't know what a sonic screwdriver is. That's part of the Doctor's iconic just iconography since the second Doctor. She must have come in before the second Doctor. Maybe even the first Doctor. And that seems to be the mystery, as they are taken away by Gat and the Sontarans using a teleportation device that takes the TARDIS away. And they stand up, they confront Gat, who reveals that she is a Time Lord, and she is working under a division in the Time Lord Society. See what I did there, for those of you who know. And basically, the Fugitive Doctor had a job on Gallifrey, but she left it. She denied it, and then the Doctor gets involved. The Ruth Doctor, seemingly by accident, kills Ruth after she takes her gun, fires it, and reveals that the gun actually has a system which backfires and kills Ruth herself. Gat herself, sorry. As the two Doctors get away, as there's now no payment and there's now no crime, because this crime happened in deep space where there is no technical laws. So the Judoon have to basically forfeit the Fugitive from their custody thing. And so the Doctors escape and they leave each other's parties. All the while, Jack is telling our companions that, give the Doctor a message that I'm going to find her and we will reunite. But beware the lone Cyberman, and whatever you do, don't give him what he wants. We'll talk about that another time. But in terms of this story, the whole thing with the Jack thing was completely stupid, completely wasted. It was a complete waste of time in this singular narrative, and it was clearly just like, hey, we're teasing stuff for the next episodes. Again, that kind of stuff that I absolutely despises in series like Doctor Who. But anyway, as the Doctor reveals to her companions what happened with Ruth, that she is an incarnation of the Doctor, possibly her past, but she has no memory of it. And this is confusing, this is strange, I don't understand it. Also, yeah, the Ruth Doctor is just like, you can get off my TARDIS now. And then the Doctor, having this big mystery, this massive mystery just in front of her, just kind of walks off, waiting for the next time, waiting for the next mystery, next point in the mystery. That is so undoctorly, in my opinion. And then that's where, like, the bigger issues come into play. But anyway, let's talk about, like, the Ruth incarnation then, the Fugitive Doctor. I think the Ruth incarnation just has a better ring to it, personally. And story-wise, it makes a lot more sense. But anyway, what this story really gets wrong about, like, clearly the reason the Ruth Doctor was invented, why Chris Chibnall has done, by the way, is clearly that this element of the story was written by Chris Chibnall. Vinil Patel wanted a standalone Judoon story, and Chris Chibnall, being scared because of fan reactions of previous season, basically chucked this massive storyline with the Fugitive Doctor and all that. Essentially, he did this to try and bring back that heavy story arc element that fans who criticised the last series and did have, like, had no malice against, like, the series. Like, if you put it in a blur, you get this kind of, you get two ideas of criticisms for the series, and that is they want the story arcs back, and the series doesn't take enough risks. Series 11 didn't take enough risks. I totally disagree on that part, but yeah, it didn't have a story arc, and that was a good thing. I don't care what anyone says. So it was basically Chris Chibnall trying to rectify that, and essentially the Ruth Doctor was supposed to be an imitation, or at least it comes off as an imitation of the War Doctor, played by John Hurt, for the story The Name of the Doctor and the Day of the Doctor, in which it's revealed that in between the Doctor's 8th and 9th incarnations, there was a secret incarnation that fought during the Time War. Essentially the similar thing here, where we reveal a secret incarnation of the Doctor from the Doctor's past. The very past, in fact, before even the first Doctor, perhaps. But what this story gets really wrong about this character is that she's not a character. Let's compare her again to the War Doctor. The War Doctor, though is part of the storyline and is mainly a plot point to the 11th Doctor and the 10th Doctor at the time, the War Doctor is still a character. John Hurt's portrayal has, in the story, has this deep regret about what actions he has done, as well as, like, tying into the bigger themes of the Doctor's regrets and the idea, like, he doesn't want to do this, and the story is about him learning, like, he can do better, he can do more. Don't give up the fight to save everyone as much as you can. Ruth Doctor's in here, the Fugitive Doctor, is a plot point and nothing else. She's not that interesting of a character when she becomes the Doctor, apart from really gritting her teeth, a very angrier portrayal of the Doctor in terms of how she's written. We don't really learn anything about her as an individual, as a person. And the only reason why anyone likes the Fugitive Doctor, I feel, is because Jo Martin is such a phenomenal actress. I was absolutely blown away when I first saw this story. I think mainly it was because Jo Martin absolutely nailed this role. I couldn't... Sorry if you can hear that. It's absolutely pouring outside. I was, like, absolutely stunned. Like, she is, like, an incarnation which I would have loved to see in the main series. She had much influences from the 12th Doctor and the 1st Doctor. By the way, Jo Martin is actually a huge fan of Doctor Who as a series, and she has stated in previous interviews that William Hartnell is her Doctor, and you can feel that in her portrayal. It's like, if they announced that Jo Martin was the 14th Doctor, of course it was Ncuti Gatwa, but if it was announced that that Jo Martin was the 14th Doctor, I don't think nobody in their right mind would criticise that, showing off her portrayal in this story. However, there is a bigger line that goes maybe even beyond the series, which I don't think a lot of people talk about, because a lot of people focus on the fact that she is supposed to be a previous incarnation from the 1st Doctor, saying stuff like, stupid stuff like, oh yeah, they're trying to make the 1st Doctor into a person of colour woman, all that rubbish and stuff. But this story does kind of have this issue, which I think is more important than the story itself. They introduced the first person of colour Doctor, a female person of colour Doctor, under the 13th Doctor as just a plot point. That's not a good look, BBC. That is not a good look. I'm not qualified to go into detail, but essentially, many years ago, there was a cliche, what's the word? Cliche of having your main protagonist, who is a white female character, having a sort of person of color, a black character underneath them to explain certain plots and set them to a certain elements. And the reason this was done was so that like the white character could seem young and hip and be with the crowd with the particular cast without actually being part of that cast, so it can be more suitable for a bigger audience kind of thing, you know what I mean? Of course, that was racist. That was stupid. And this story kind of reminds me... Of course, it wasn't intentional. I'm not saying this was intentional, but this reminded me of that really racist cliche from the 30s, 40s, maybe the 50s and the 60s, which was, it's very bad, very, very, very wrong. But yeah, like I said, Joe Martin absolutely nails this role. But also the indication that she is the first, she was the incarnation before the first Doctor. There is things in the story that kind of disprove that, even though so far, as I'm recording this, we've got Power of the Doctor left to watch. As I'm recording this anyway, that hasn't been disproven. But in the story, it doesn't make a sense for one reason. And that is the Doctor's TARDIS is a police telephone box. You might have known that the Doctor's TARDIS was a telephone box because the first Doctor got it stuck in a junkyard and it took the form of a police telephone box in 1963. That was the reason it was a police box, and the Canadian circuit got stuck. So the TARDIS couldn't be pre-Hartnell, right? I guess the story's going to forget about that element, but that's just like a nerdy fact. But the implications of her being the incarnation before the first Doctor was massive and completely was controversial. A lot of people had stupid reasons to hate this controversy. A few people do, however, including myself, and that's for mainly one reason, and that is it complicates the Doctor's character for no reason other than just adding a bunch more Wikipedia page, adding a bit more stuff. We'll talk about more about this when we get to the Timeless Children storyline, the finale of Series 12. But I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in learning about the secret past of the Doctor. I like to keep the Doctor's mystery a secret. Maybe explore like how it's a mystery and how it affects other characters, like they did with Ace, with the Seventh Doctor, and how like she technically didn't know anything about him, about the Seventh Doctor, but actually going in and explaining the mystery. But I do like the fact that it's also a mystery to the Doctor at this point. It's essentially a resurrected version of the Cartnell Master Plan. For those of you who don't know, in the classic series, there was this thing called the Cartnell Master Plan. It was named after the producer, Andrew Cartnell. However, his only idea was that just to make the Doctor a bit more mysterious, maybe not even make him a Time Lord, which, again, we'll talk about in the Timeless Children. And it was two writers. Mark Platt was one of them. Ben Aravanchi, I can't remember how he pronounced his last name. They basically came up with this completely new mythology about the Other, and a lung barrow, and a completely reformed version of Time Lord society, and like really complicated, really stuff. I'm not interested in that particularly side of the series, but then some people are, and some people did enjoy this story for those elements. More power to you. Don't care what the naysayers say. Just, if you enjoy it, enjoy those elements. But personally, I'm not a fan, should I say, of going in these elements. I feel like the Doctor's backstory should have been kept a mystery. Especially these kind of elements on why she left Gallifrey, which this story implies that there is a bigger reason, something to do like military, like a military job, and a secret organizations of sorts, or something to do with the High Council of Gallifrey, possibly. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of these elements. And so that is The Fugitive of the Judoon. Overall, it starts off very promising. The story, when it feels self-contained and it's focusing on the Judoon stuff, yes, absolutely. But these are short-handed. And because the story is so focused on the story arc stuff and the Ruth Doctor's introduction is so poorly handled. Jack is back, yes! But he's only here so at the very end of the story he can say, beware the lone Cyberman. Don't give him what he wants. Which, when you actually watch the story, this actual scene is completely wasted in the story. Just complete wasted time. This story is mainly to do with setup. It's mainly about focusing. And stuff like the Doctor has revealed this big mystery in front of her. And the end of the story just has her just kind of walking away from it. And just like, yes, okay, the next time we meet, I will ask her. The next time, like, thing. And her companions is like, I don't care if you run towards it or you wait until it comes to you. We will be by your side. It's like, this is the Doctor. One of her biggest character arcs, character traits from every incarnation is that they don't like mysteries like this. They go in and investigate things. That's like the whole Doctor Who series is about that. They go to a place, they see a crime, they see a murder, and stuff, and they go and investigate it. That's like the main premise of the show. And the Doctor comes up with probably one of the biggest mysteries of her entire life, and just kind of walks off with it. Really, really dumb. It's so clear. It's so clear that the reason this was done is because this is a story that's set halfway into the series, and we can't talk about the Fugitive Doctor. We can't talk about the Timeless Children or like who the Ruth Doctor's working for and all this big mystery until the very last episode. So we just have to kind of forget about that as we get to other episodes throughout the series and get onto that. Really poorly handled. It reminds me so much of all the stuff that I hate about Stephen Moffat era. And the more I watch the story, the more I dislike it for these reasons. However, it does introduce Joe Martin as the Doctor, one of the greatest guest actors, who I really, really want to see play an official Doctor. I really, really wanted it. The twist would be that she was actually a future incarnation of the Doctor, and she will one day take over the show. That would have been so cool, but she's absolutely wasted in this story arc heavy monarch of the series. Like, I can't express how much disappointment I am in that. Also as well that this story was supposed to be a standalone Judoon story. I would want that, and it's written by Vinay Patel, sorry. And then it just diverges into this story arc mumbo jumbo. Just a complete waste. This is probably my least favourite story because it had so much potential at the start. A fun action adventure of the Judoon chasing down someone in a small little village. There's some really great death scenes I forgot to mention. There's one scene where this old woman walks into the Judoon barrier and just completely gets annihilated and you see her bones. Really cool stuff. But yeah, the story's completely wasted on these story arc elements. And they're so poorly handled as well. Again, reminds me so much of the Stephen Moffat era, where stuff like this happened like almost every other week, and it was really dull. This episode reminds me of the version of the show that I was getting tired of. And that is Fugitive of the Judoon. So join me next time where there is a massive conspiracy revolving around what seems to be an alien plague around the globe of the Earth as they save an astronaut. Did they save an astronaut? I can't remember. And there seems to be some mysteries going around on the planet of Earth in modern day Earth. So join me next time for, is it Praxius? Praxius, yes. So join me next time for Praxius, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!